You know, when you think about massive business disasters, you probably think of a few specific things. But what if I told you one of the biggest blow-ups of the last decade didn't start with any of the usual suspects?
So, did it start with some kind of bad technology? I mean, that's a common culprit, right? But nope. The tech side of things, their apps, their booking systems, it all worked pretty much fine. That wasn't the issue here.
Okay, so if it's not the tech, maybe a weak market? Bad timing? Not a chance. Actually, it was the opposite. The market for cool, flexible office space was absolutely on fire. Demand was through the roof.
All right, last guess. A lack of money? Did they just run out of cash? Oh, definitely not. We're talking billions, with a capital B, were poured into this thing. No, the real cause of this disaster, it was something way more powerful and honestly, way more dangerous. It all started with a story.
And this was a story so good, so compelling, that it convinced some of the smartest people in the world that a regular old real estate company was actually a revolutionary tech giant, one worth, get this, $47 billion. This is the story of WeWork and how it all came crashing down under the weight of its very own illusion.
So where does an illusion this big even come from? Well, you know, like all the best magic tricks, it started with something real, a genuinely brilliant idea, actually, and it landed at the absolute perfect moment.
I mean, it solved a problem we all kind of knew existed. Think about traditional offices, right? They were awful, cold, super rigid, and you had to sign these crazy expensive long-term leases. WeWork just completely flipped that on its head. They offered modern, exciting spaces, and you had total flexibility. But the real magic trick, the real genius, was that they stopped selling square footage. Instead, they started selling an identity. See, you weren't just renting a desk anymore. You were joining a community. You were buying into the future of work. And this whole message, it was perfect for the time. This was the 2010s, right? The era of the startup founder as rock star. Founders were treated like prophets. Growth at all costs was the mantra. Who cares about profits? And investors? Oh man. They had this massive fear of missing out, or FOMO. They were terrified of passing on the next big thing. And that fear, that was the rocket fuel for WeWork's insane expansion.
And right at the heart of this whole thing was a founder who understood this perfectly. He wasn't just selling desks. He was selling a spiritual vision, a full-blown movement. His name was Adam Neumann.
Neumann, he didn't talk like a real estate guy. He talked like a prophet. He used this huge visionary language, saying things like he wanted to elevate the world's consciousness. I mean, this quote says it all, right? We are here in order to change the world. It wasn't about office furniture. It was about this grand, world-changing mission. And let me tell you, in that startup climate, that kind of talk attracts a lot of money.
And boy, did the money follow. Investors, especially this one firm called SoftBank, just started pouring in billions. They drove WeWork's private valuation up to $47 billion. Just take a second and let that number sink in. $47 billion.
So here's the thing. When a company's price tag gets that big, something really dangerous starts to happen. The investors, they're not really funding a business anymore. They're defending a story. The actual numbers, the balance sheet, that stuff starts to matter less than the narrative. It's not about finding the truth anymore, it's about protecting their bet and, well, protecting their belief in the fantasy. But, and this is a huge but, underneath all that hype, all that slick branding, there was a massive hidden flaw. The company was telling everyone it was one thing, while in reality, it was operating as something completely different.
And right here, this is the whole problem in a nutshell. The story they sold was tech startup. Limitless scale, a platform that could just grow and grow forever. The reality though, it was just a real estate company. It had physical buildings, which means physical limits. It was asset heavy, and it had massive fixed costs. So basically it had all the heavy risks of real estate with none of those sweet, magical profit margins you get with a real tech company.
And that mismatch, it created a business model that was just incredibly risky. Just take it through for a second. WeWork would go out and sign these super expensive long-term leases on buildings. We're talking 10, 15 years. But then they turn around and rent that same space out to people on flexible, short-term deals, sometimes even month to month. Now, when money is just pouring in and you're growing like crazy, that feels fine. But the second there's a downturn, it's a financial death trap. Absolutely.
And honestly, this is one of the biggest takeaways from the whole WeWork story. A fundamentally broken business model can look like absolute genius for a surprisingly long time. But there's a catch. It only works as long as new money keeps walking in the door to pay for all the losses. So yeah, this whole thing was basically a house of cards. And it was always gonna fall. That moment of truth finally came in 2019. WeWork filed the paperwork to go public, to have an IPO. And for the very first time, this private story that they'd been telling, it was about to meet the harsh, cold reality of the public markets. And wow, when it fell fast. I mean, it was breathtaking. In August, the IPO documents come out and reveal, whoops, the company is losing an insane amount of money. By September, that $47 billion valuation is in absolute free fall, maybe dropping as low as $10 billion. And by October, the IPO is off the table, and Adam Neumann is pushed out as CEO. The whole thing just completely unraveled in a few short weeks. So why did it collapse so fast, so suddenly? It's simple, really. You can sell a story to a handful of private investors in a boardroom, but you can't hypnotize a public balance sheet. The hard numbers, they don't care about charisma. They told a very different story, one about reckless spending and just completely unsustainable losses. And just like that, the magic spell was broken.
But even after the IPO blew up and Neumann was gone, the company didn't just disappear. It kind of limped along, trying to figure out how to save itself. This final chapter, this is really the official death of the WeWork myth.
I mean, they tried everything. They restructured, they cut costs like crazy, they even managed to go public later through a kind of backdoor deal. But the core problems, that fundamental flaw in the business model, it was still there. So on November 6th, 2023, the inevitable finally happened. WeWork filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Now, it did emerge from that in 2024, smaller and with less debt, but that grand, world-changing legend, yeah, that was over, for good.
And really, that's the key takeaway here. The company itself, the business of renting office space, it did survive, just in a much smaller, humbler form. But the fantasy, that powerful idea that enough charisma and enough hype could actually let you defy the basic laws of economics, that was dead and buried.
So when you look back at all this, what was WeWork really selling? It was so much more than office space. It was selling a feeling. The feeling of being early to something big, the feeling of being modern, the feeling that you belonged to the future. It was selling you a belief in a story. And you got to admit, that is an incredibly powerful product to sell. And at the end of the day, you can't just point the finger at Adam Neumann, or just the investors. This whole thing was a kind of collective delusion. It really happened because, for a very long time, a whole lot of people, investors, employees, even us in the media, we all benefited, financially or professionally, from pretending that everything was okay, from pretending the emperor was actually wearing clothes. Which leaves us with a really tough question, doesn't it? I mean, we love to celebrate visionary founders, people who want to change the world. But this whole WeWork story, it forces you to ask, where is the line? At what point does a powerful vision cross over and become a dangerous, multi-billion-dollar illusion? And maybe more importantly, how do we spot the difference before it's too late?